Hello, Ram55 here, and thanks for tuning in. We're back on Trainz Railroad Simulator 2019 again, and this is session 12. It's the third of our series of videos showing the switching operations at Tidewater and up at Riverpoint. Session 10, we showed the Tidewater Railroad engineers switching the coal wharf down at Riverpoint, at Tidewater. And then our last video, session 11, we were switching the mills with, I think, Donald. He switched Tidewater mills, shuffled some cars around. And then we closed that video with Jane, who we're watching here, switching the big silos up at Riverpoint. Well, she's done with those operations. Now she's back in the Riverpoint yard. She'll be picking up those containers over on the right and dragging those over to the Intermodal yard. Now, since this video was made, I've done some more major surgery on both the yard down at Tidewater and here at Riverpoint. Especially this part right here, when you look at those tracks, pretty confusing, you know, which track you need to be on to get to whatever, and it was overly complex. So I've done a lot of rearranging there. The other thing is that all the railroad yard tracks are extremely long, and I don't need length. For the size of the Tidewater Railroad, we don't get that much business. So I shortened those up. Obviously, the longer cars and the bigger businesses, like the long cars that are carrying the containers for the intermodal yard, and the amount of business they do at the silos at the grain mill, maybe they do require a longer yard track. So I kept a little bit of the length there, but they're still shorter than they were. But for the local industries, you know, we don't need a whole lot of length there, so I've chopped those down considerably. I've also compressed the tracks too. You'll see there's a pretty big gap between the rails here, and you know, the yard tracks really aren't that far apart. They're actually quite close together. And I've seen some videos where, you know, you'd think twice about walking in between the cars. There's so little clearance between the tracks. So anyways, I've compressed those down, and that gave me more tracks to do sorting on, to do classifications on. And I think that's what I need, is more classification tracks. I don't need the length because we don't get that much traffic. And I think as we cycle through one day to the next, there'll be more cars on the yard, because right now they're pretty bare. You got to remember, this is still day one of our operation. So when we started, there were no cars in the yard, there were no cars at the industries, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, our first train came in and we started filling things up. Now, as we get more traffic in, and over the course of a couple days, not only will we be dropping off the cars at the industries, but we'll be picking up the loaded or empty cars for pickup later on these tracks. So I think there'll be a lot more cars sorted and stored on these tracks waiting for the next train to come in and pick them up. So right now Jane's latched on to the well cars that were dropped off by Canadian National. I think there's only 10 or 11 cars in this cut, and she will have no problem getting these all on the unloading tracks over at the intermodal yard. So like I said, I've made a lot more big changes here on the Tidewater Railroad. I've modified this yard. I've also condensed the tracks down at Tidewater. That will give me more classification tracks, and I've also shortened those down as well, as we've talked about in the past. I've also put in some ship traffic, which is actually moving out on the river there in Tidewater, which is kind of cool. I made a big loop of invisible track. Gave them a speed limit of 9 miles an hour, which is, I think, pretty typical for large freighters moving up and down the rivers. And then have them go from I set 4 points up on that loop, and they go from one point to the next, and made the track direction one direction, so they'll never catch up to each other. And I put 4 ships up there that are just completely doing a circle, so that's kind of cool. I've also named the industries, both here at Riverpoint and down at Tidewater, as well as the mills in between. So we'll go through those named industries later. So right now, the way you're looking at these tracks, the track on the left is the Tidewater Mainline heading down to Tidewater from here at Riverpoint. The track she's on right now was originally just a big yard lead for Riverpoint, but that's actually the Canadian National Mainline heading west. There's a big old staging track behind the hills and stuff. So those 2 tracks still exist, but coming into the yard, they merge into one. So there's only one main line coming into the yard. I've gotten rid of this crossover because it's really not needed. I got rid of that double slip switch on the other end of the yard on the east end, which I absolutely hate. And that's just now a regular turnout. Now, when I first played this session, when I tried to back these container cars up right here, it was not moving. The brakes were off. I gave her 8 notches of power, and I could not get it to move. The engine was cycling up. You could hear it gunning the engine, but I couldn't get it to move. Changed the camera position to here, and suddenly it's moving now as it should with a minimal throttle input. Go figure. I have no idea what happened there. So here we are looking from the industry that's now called Perry's Fuel Depot. Yeah, she's backing these container trucks or container cars underneath the viaduct. And I'm rethinking, how I'm going to operate the layout. Obviously, it's a one-man operation. I would like to see more traffic, more cars coming into the yard and into the industries. That will happen naturally as we cycle through a 24-hour operating session. Originally, I deleted a Canadian National mixed train, a CSX, and a Norfolk Southern mixed train. But I think I'm going to put those back in. That'll give me some more traffic to switch. Give me some more cars in the yard. But I think what I'll do is have those come in, since this is a 24-hour operation, come in after dark. And I'm not sure whether or not I will make a video of those, since filming at night sometimes is kind of frustrating because you can't see anything. We'll see how the video goes and how well that it shows up. But I will put 3 more mixed trains back into the schedule for the day. Now, another thing that I find very peculiar, you'll see those trucks on the right there. They're empty container trucks. There's 2 tracks for unloading the container cars as they're pushed in. But that gantry, the overhead crane, straddles both of those unloading tracks, but it doesn't straddle the trucks. So how do they get from the railroad cars to the trucks when that crane can't reach the trucks? So that doesn't make any sense to me. So right now, Jane is gonna uncut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 6 cars. I'll leave her 3, and she'll put them over on that second unloading track there. But those trucks over to the right, there's no way to get the containers over to them. So what I think I'm gonna have to do is just make this a single unloading track, and then put the trucks in the other lane. That's really the only way that makes sense. I mean, they don't magically fly over there. So there'll be 1 track leading back to that intermodal yard. I'll have to watch some videos on YouTube to see how it's actually done, but obviously they have to straddle both in order for that whole process to work. I know some of those cranes, you know, where the ships, the container ships come in, carrying, I don't know, many thousands of containers from the Far East. Those things are way off the ground. It's incredible how high those are. And those guys, it takes a lot of skill to pick up those containers off the ship and drop them down onto these awaiting trucks when they may be, I don't know, 100 feet, 150 feet below them. And as they pick them up, obviously the wind will sway those containers. The movement of the overhead crane itself will cause those containers to sway. It is quite a skill that those guys have, and I think they make big money as a result too. But anyways, I'll have to watch a video just to make sure that in my mind what I'm saying is correct, that you have to not only straddle the unloading track, but you have to straddle the area where the trucks come in to get loaded. So Jane's backing up her last 3 cars there. They will easily fit on that track. The other thing that I thought was peculiar, up here at Riverpoint, got this industrial park here with a lot of businesses, but I look around at all the surrounding community. There's farmland, which we expect because this is a farm producing area. It's, you know, a lot of grain, but there ain't no houses. There's no place for the people to live. So I've actually put in the town of Riverpoint just to make it look a little bit more viable, that, hey, yeah, there are really people living in the area. They're commuting here to work and doing other jobs in the area. So I added that area to Riverpoint as well. And that big viaduct that cuts across the yard leads to nowhere. Well, it's got to lead to somewhere, right? So I'm thinking I'll put in like a Home Depot and a Walmart, you know, some of those big shopping areas that you would normally see in a community that are not in the downtown area. They're not right in the middle of town. They're off on the fringes, on the edges. So I may put in some of those kind of buildings just to give it some more realism, like people, yeah, they're really living here. They're doing their job. They go buy their stuff. They buy their groceries. So Jane has made her last cut. She is done for this session. She switched the grain mill. She's just finished up with the intermodal yard. Now she'll head back to the offices and take a little break till the next duty comes along. And as I said before, this is a 24-hour operation, so obviously people aren't going to be on their job for 24 hours. She may get replaced with another engineer. Her day may be done right now. The first train came in on this operating day at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I think if I can read that time correctly, it's almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's about the end of her shift, unless they do 12 on, 12 off. I'm sure that engineers, like pilots, have crew days, and they're only allowed to work so many hours, and then they have to have a certain amount of time off. So if any of you guys actually work the railroad or know what a typical engineer's day would be, let me know. Post it in the comments. The other thing I want to do is I want to make the bubble for these switches much smaller. I think the standard distance is like 20 feet, something like that. You have to go past the switch by 20 feet to unlock it. I want to bring that down to about 1 or 2, or maybe it's 20 meters, I'm not sure. Anyways, I want to bring that down to about 1 or 2. So all you have to do is just barely go past the switch, as in real life, in order to unlock it and throw the switch in the opposite direction. So as Jane heads back to end this session, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate all the comments people have made. I appreciate all the good comments and the likes. Appreciate you tuning in. I enjoy running trains, and making videos is time consuming, but I enjoy doing that as well. And it's very reassuring to get the positive feedback. So I appreciate that. And as I've said several times, this is a work in progress. It is by no means complete. As I rearrange track, change industries, add buildings, figure out my operating sessions, what works, what doesn't. It's a work in progress. And if you guys have any input or any suggestions, things that I can try, feel free to leave them in the comments. Anyways, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. As they always say, give me a like, thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys on the next video.